Ina, if you're good. Perfect. Thank you guys for your patience. I apologize, and our FSSA production team's been hard at work. FSSA has multiple things that are being recorded and being streamed right now. And literally, there's like 3 different big meetings. So we're flying. So not flying by the seat of our pants a little bit, but trying to organize this. So looks like most of you were able to get on, and I appreciate it. And sorry about all the emails that I was sending last night and earlier this week. So appreciate it. So I'm gonna jump us off here. Again, welcome, excited to be here. As you guys know, our motto, all people are empowered to live, love, work, learn, play, and pursue their dreams. We like to start each meeting with that. Here's the agenda for today. We've got some welcome, a video that I'm going to attempt. I don't normally use Zoom, so I'm going to try to do this. What I might do, Noah, is have you run through the roster first as I'm trying to tee this up, just to give me a little bit of time. That might be helpful. And then we've got some waiver and pathways updates. We have Teresa Colazar here to give us a BRS, some exciting things going on there. Kyle and Teresa giving us just a little bit of information around aligning the waiver employment supports and VR services. Kelly Mitchell and I talking about some American Rescue Plan Act projects. We've got really some 2 things going on: the dual diagnosis capacity building initiative, as well as you know, the innovation pilot projects that I'm working on. And then we've got something on here just as a housekeeping item. We're going to try to keep us on track. As you guys know, sometimes, especially virtually, like we can start talking and it's great conversation, but if we start going down a tangent, we might stop you. Noah's going to be the bad person, who yells at you and tells you to stop talking. No, but he's too nice, so I'll do it. But anyway, no, but so if we kind of are getting off a tangent a little bit, we'll just sort of put that in a parking lot. So we're going to leave about 15 minutes at the end of each of the council meetings just to revisit anything that maybe we weren't able to fully talk about. And just so that we try to keep on schedule as much as we can, because we pack these in a lot of times, which is great, but we only meet once a month. So we try to have as much conversation as we can. Another housekeeping item, we are just about ready to fill the family member position that most likely will be joining next month. The second, and also filling the Bida is not on. She wasn't able to join. I wanted to officially send her on her way from the committee, but she wasn't able to join today. But we'll also be filling that provider. There are 2, one of the provider members, as she was rolling off her 2 years. So we'll have those members hopefully able to join next month, which is in person in September. So no, I'm going to turn it over to you if you're okay, just taking roll call real quick, and then I will try to tee up this video and see if I can get it to work.
Absolutely. So we're going to start off with roll call here. Megan Berger. Sean Fulton.
I am here.
Katie Stafford Cunningham.
Here.
Karen Brummett.
Good morning, everybody.
Kate Barrow.
I'm here.
Kim Dotson.
Good morning, I'm here.
Kelly Hartman.
I'm here too.
Melissa Keys.
I'm here.
Carrie Lee.
Here.
Derek Nord. Lisa Paddock.
Here.
Loretta Springer. Kelly Mitchell.
Good morning, everyone.
Kathy Robinson. Jessica Harlan York. Kyle Ingram.
Here.
Matt Rodway. Holly Wimsat.
Here.
Teresa Colazar.
Morning.
Christina Commons. And Billy Martin Johnson. All right. Thank you, everyone.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, I didn't say here.
Jessica, I I have an email from Derek Nord that states he cannot locate the URL or the Zoom link for the meeting.
Looks like he just
Okay.
joined.
All right.
Sorry, everyone.
I just
it
saw
appeared
it pop through.
sorry,
Okay.
it went to my junk. It went to my junk email.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
I
I'm
just, I
wondering if
saw it
that's-
pop through, Derek. My apologies.
Yeah, I'm wondering if that maybe happened with folks. That maybe Teresa, that might have been your issue too. We kept okay. All right. I'm going to, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to skip the video for right now just because I'm trying to, like I said, do 3 things at once and I can't find it. So maybe we can play that at the end if that's okay, Noah, once I
Yeah, of course.
in my just because I'm not sure if I'm sharing it and I got too many screens open. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and just keep plugging away here, move forward. So we'll do that at the end. Okay. Okay. Moving right along, we have Holly and Kelly Mitchell who are going to give us a Medicaid waiver update as well as a pathways update. And I know you're all excited. And if you have any questions, like I said, I'll monitor the chat as well and try to see if we can weave those in as they're speaking. And I'll run the slides for you guys.
Well, again, good morning, everyone. I'm just going to speak briefly. Honestly, going to let Holly Wemsett, our BDS director, take the lead on the majority of this. Hard to believe we are 1.5 months into the launch of our waiver integration and pathways waivers. We overall continuing to track the progress. We haven't identified any huge quote unquote system issues, but we do have triage teams that continue to be in place as either one-off matters that affect a member directly are elevated to us, or if we do pinpoint some system issues that aren't overall problematic but need to be worked out. We are working closely with our MCE team, our providers. We're continuing to meet regularly with advocacy groups, inclusive of family advocacy groups and our provider associations on a rather regular cadence, weekly and bi-weekly in most cases, with those particular organizations. I do want to share, I think most of you are continuing to monitor our web pages where we are constantly updating information, providing guidance, updating what our FAQ section, frequently asked questions. But I'm going to share now in the link, we have now launched, and Holly will be talking about waitlist in her particular presentation. But we have launched our HCBS waiver waiting list web page. So that is a dashboard. It's very easy to read and navigate, and it will give the public an insight into the number of individuals that are invited from the health and wellness and pathways waiver waiting list each month. And it provides a breakdown of from where those individuals have been referred or from where they come, if you will. So I think you'll find that informative. That I put in the link, but that is up and live as of today. Holly, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thanks, Kelly. Apologies, my voice is wanting to leave me today. But wanted to get started and just provide a brief update on the 1102 task force. If you want to move to the next slide, please. So I'm sure we all recall that what you see on the slide here are results of a subcommittee and priorities work groups in 2023. It's hard to believe that it was 2023, but now that we're past the halfway point of 2024. But again, those priority work group and subcommittees met, reviewed, and prioritized the 1102 recommendations. And this just provides a little bit of information about that. I did want to include some information on the subcommittee established by House Bill 1067. So this subcommittee has been meeting this summer to identify opportunities to improve access to and utilization of MedWorks, which, as you know, is the Indiana's buy-in program for employees with disabilities and individuals with IDD. That subcommittee will meet in August and September to draft recommendations for regulatory and legislative improvements to the existing MedWorks program. Those recommendations will be submitted to the 1102 task force by October 1st. And you will note we did also include, and this probably looks familiar, some recommendations that were noted as having limited progress on those. But focusing on the priorities, next slide, please. Next slide. Oh, thank you. These are the priorities identified by the subcommittee in 2023. And as 1102 sunsets at the end of this calendar year, beginning in January of 2025, we will provide updates on the remaining prioritized recommendations. So just know that after that task force sunsets, we will again provide updates on those prioritized recommendations. Next slide. So I want to provide just a couple or a few updates. So as you know, the Family Support Waiver and CIH amendments that were approved by CMS and went effective on July 1st of this year, just 6-7 weeks ago, included some clarification on the time limit for facility-based pre-vocational services. So as of July 1st, individuals may receive facility-based pre-vocational services for up to 18 months. Now, you know, we started that 18-month time limit on July 1st for everyone. So there was no retro implementation of that. So if someone was receiving facility-based pre-vocational services on June 30th, that's fine. That didn't count towards the 18-month limit. That 18-month limit actually just started on July 1st. This meant that case managers needed to follow up with individuals and teams regarding their desire to participate in pre-vocational services and designate on the PCISP if the individual was going to access community-based pre-voc and or facility-based pre-voc. So in order to track those 18 months, we had to separate out the facility-based versus the community-based. So now, as of July 1st, the service authorization or notice of action delineates which setting individuals are going to receive pre-vocational services in. So there exists some flexibility within those rate groups for billing of those the facility-based pre-vocational services. We are exploring to make sure that we're exploring options to make sure we're keeping that as flexible as we can for individuals, and in recognition of the fact that there may be times when someone is in facility-based pre-voc and there's some staffing challenges and the ratio needs to be a little higher. So we are exploring if there's any way to make that a little more flexible moving forward. The ISTs or support teams during this 18-month period, these first 18 months, are tasked with development of a transition plan to ensure that individuals are prepared for when facility-based pre-vocational services is no longer a service reimbursed by the waiver. We anticipate that to be around 2027. In recognition of the fact that we have a number of individuals who have been participating in facility-based pre-voc for sometimes extended periods, we are building in an ability for an individual to request an extension after those first 18 months or near the end of the first 18 months. They will be able to request another 18-month extension. And we anticipate this will be used mostly by individuals who have been in that service and receiving that service for long periods of time. So again, we will be building in the flexibility for individuals to request an 18-month extension near the end of the first 18 months. That will, again, if the team needs additional time to support that individual in exploring other services, or hopefully exploring other services that will support a journey toward competitive integrated employment. Next slide, please. So as Kelly mentioned, we now have oversight responsibility for the health and wellness and TBI, or traumatic brain injury, waivers as of July 1st. As she said, it's gone well. We continue to coordinate efforts with lots of different partners, including the area agencies on aging and independent care managers, and then our state partners at OMPP and Division of Aging. But as a point of clarification, because as with any change, we want to make sure that we communicate frequently, even if we're communicating something we've already communicated, right? We want to make sure that families and individuals understand and know that the area agencies on aging and independent case management or care management will continue to provide case management on the health and wellness and TBI waivers. So there was no need for anyone to change care manager or case manager as the A&D transitioned or split into the health and wellness. Those AAAs and care management, independent care managers, continue to provide that service on the health and wellness and TBI waivers. Additionally, the area agencies on aging are continuing to complete nursing facility level of care assessments and reassessments for the health and wellness and the TBI waivers. That, again, hasn't changed, and we continue to coordinate with them on those assessments and reassessments, and with our friends and partners at Division of Aging. Lastly, the front door, and we can switch to the next slide, Jess. For individuals seeking services and supports through the health and wellness and the traumatic brain injury waivers, the area agencies on aging and aging and disability resource centers continue to be that front door. As I mentioned, they are responsible for the level of care assessments. So that continues to be the front door to access the health and wellness and the TBI waiver. For individuals seeking services through the family support waiver, the CIH waiver, or SGL, the BEADS district offices continue to be that front door. We are coordinating with the AAAs and ADRCs, trying to make sure, or in an attempt to make sure that we reduce any confusion out there about that, doing warm handoffs if somebody contacts us about health and wellness assessment, level of care assessment for health and wellness, or if someone contacts the area agency on aging about an assessment for the family support waiver or CIH, which we've not seen that much, but we have seen some confusion around who they need to contact. So we continue to offer that out and make sure that our partners are also sharing that information with individuals and families. We also trained care managers, next slide please, on an age-in transition process. So we're past go live, and we know that individuals will age into the pathways for aging from the health and wellness waiver on their birthday month. Essentially, the month they turn 60, they will transition to the pathways for aging waiver. Excuse me. So we provided some training to care managers and some additional resources on what that age-in transition process will look like from the care manager standpoint. So as you would, I'm sure would agree, making sure that everything is current for an individual who's going to be transitioning or aging into pathways. It's really important that everything be current and up to date. So the guidance that we have provided to care managers on the health and wellness waiver is that they really, starting at the 59.5 years of age, and we let them know when people hit that mark or are going to hit that mark, we have provided guidance around home visits, ensuring on a very regular basis that all the demographic information for the individual is current in CAMS, which is the IT system currently utilized for the health and wellness and TBI waivers, the case management IT system. Also ensuring that any and all assessments are updated as required leading into that transition or age in transition. And then lastly, that the person-centered support plan is updated as required. So, you know, we know that people's needs change. And if there is something that changes between that 59.5 and 60, that needs to be addressed in that person-centered support plan prior to that transition to pathways. The health and wellness care manager is also responsible for reminding individuals and families how to contact the enrollment broker, where to find information on pathways, and excuse me, the managed care entities. We have a BEAD staff person who is responsible for coordinating these activities with the area agencies on aging to ensure that these activities are taking place for individuals who will be aging into pathways, and also that those efforts are being documented, again, currently in the case management or care management IT system, which is CAMS. Okay. Kelly, thank you for providing that website for the wait list dashboard. That this information is on that dashboard. So, but just to remind everyone, since July, we invite, or monthly since July, we invite 125 individuals from the health and wellness wait list into services, and 800 off the pathways wait list per month into services. To date, you will see here and on the dashboard that 266 individuals have been invited off of the health and wellness wait list and into services, and 1,728 individuals have been invited off of the pathways wait list and into services. Now you're probably thinking that those numbers seem to be slightly higher, right, than the 125 and the 800 per month. And that is because as we have invited people, there have been some individuals who have declined for whatever reason to pursue that. So we are, you know, looking at backfilling those slots for those who decline the waiver. So that's where you see those numbers are slightly higher. You're not changing the slot numbers. It's just as people have declined. Next slide. Thank you. So, I am so sorry. Excuse me. So, as we know, nursing facility level of care is the level of care required for the health and wellness waiver. And as noted in some previous communications, FSSA has been working toward a new pediatric level of care tool to determine nursing facility level of care. Our plan for implementation of that is July 1st of 2025. It is really, as we think about the waiver integration, it's really our vision that we would reach a space where a person gets one assessment engagement instead of going to multiple doors to get an eligibility decision and then to access waiver options that best meet their needs. So we are exploring the Intrice suite of tools in light of that goal to, you know, again, kind of streamline that eligibility process and do what we can to ensure that individuals and families don't have to tell their story over and over and over. So you will see that, and we'll talk a little bit more about that July 2025 in a minute. Next slide, please. So we've engaged with stakeholders throughout this waiver integration journey, including, but certainly not limited to, biweekly case care manager webinars and biweekly webinars for individuals and families supported through the Age and Disabled Waiver, or what was the Age and Disabled Waiver. You likely recall that during COVID, BEADS provided weekly webinars for providers and case managers. We've continued those engagements over the subsequent years, though their frequency has varied since the end of the PHE. Now that the health and wellness and TBI waivers have transitioned to BEADS, we have resumed the provider and case or care manager webinars on a monthly basis. It had been every other month most recently. So we are now doing those monthly. We've had one so far, and we have another one this week. These provider and care case manager webinars are inclusive of all providers and all care and case managers. We are looking at ways to ensure that we are providing information that's relevant to across the board for providers and care managers. And we are starting this week, including IPP grantees, so that they can present their work to providers and care managers. That's just going to be a regular part of these engagements. So we're really excited about that. Again, our next one is this week. So we will be continuing that. Also, building bridges. We are scheduling those events again to engage with individuals and families. And also we'll continue, of course, to provide updates in a variety of ways. Additional webinars, listening sessions as we continue to navigate this waiver integration. Next slide, please. Okay. Lastly, I want to provide some information on waiver redesign or reset. Next slide, please. So I always like to show what we've achieved thus far. So you see here, these are complete. We had the A&D waiver renewal in 2023. We had the waiver amendments that included the rate increases in 2023. And then, of course, most recently, the approval on the pathways waivers and all the amendments for the FSWCIH, what is now the health and wellness and the TBI waivers. And while we were doing that, we were also working through phase 1 of employment transformation plan, and then also the IPP implementation. So just want to make sure that we are highlighting everything that has been accomplished thus far with regard to home and community-based services.
Holly, I just wanted to let you know that there were some questions in the chat.
Thank you, Noah. I get
Absolutely.
caught up in presenting. Okay, let me. Oops.
Holly, you want me to read them? Sorry.
That would be great. I've got multiple screens.
And these are, yeah, we have some time. So, and these are applicable. So, it goes back to the a couple of wait lists. So is the number of H&W invitations expected to increase at some point? I believe FSSA previously communicated that over 4,000 new applications had been received just this year. So inviting 125 would mean about a 2 to 3 year wait list. So I guess if it's expected to increase, the question.
Yeah, I think, and Kelly may want to weigh in as well, but I mean, we are always evaluating that based on our slot availability on the waivers. So that's the best, or that's what I can say at this point, is that we're consistently evaluating how many slots we have available on the waivers and, what that looks like in terms of who we can invite off of the health and wellness and pathways wait list. Excuse me. I do want to, again, highlight that we are looking at, as noted previously, when we have individuals that are being invited to the health and wellness waiver, as those decline, or if they are no longer able for one reason or another not to take advantage of that HCBS, of that waiver invitation, we are looking at and have been backfilling those. slots. Kelly, I saw you came off mute. I don't know if you had something to add to that.
And no, I think just to enhance what you stated, that 125 is a target, and I think we've put forth, that's based on, to Holly's point, the number of available waiver slots that we have on health and wellness. So that was a part of the calculation. And then obviously capacity, if you will, to onboard. And while there's no plan to bump that up or down or what have you, it is somewhat fluid in nature as we continue to assess both those capacities. But a predominant factor is the number of available health and wellness waiver slots. And so that's how that was calculated. I also might add that it is difficult to assess the length of time someone would be on either the health and wellness or pathways waiting list merely based upon date. I think all of you are aware that there are individuals that would be, I'm going to say, like first in order of selection to be invited off of the waiting list because of some categories, of priority. So that would be that it'd be difficult to make a blanket statement about the length of time on that. So thank you, Holly.
Thank you, Kelly.
And then the other question, Holly, was, is there any talks about having a portal for those on the pathways and H&W waiting list, similar to the FSW, so that people can see where they are on the list as far as the date they applied and the date now being invited?
Yeah, Kim, that's a great question. And we continue to kind of look at how we can increase visibility and transparency there. Right now, individuals can get that information by just contacting the area agency on aging. So that information is available to them to be able to, find out when they were put on that wait list. But as we're currently working in 2 different IT case management systems. So that functionality that we have for the FSW isn't currently available for the health and wellness and waiver. Did you have a follow-up, Kim?
Yeah, I did. And Jessica, I'm being extremely sensitive to the time. So please know that. I'm hesitant.
So we're actually good. We have 10 more minutes, so we're good.
Okay. So Holly, do you have any advice then for families who either aren't getting a call back from their AAA or their case manager? Because some of them aren't getting that information. And is there a fallback plan to help if they're not getting answers from their AAA?
Yeah, they can certainly email. There's the Beads Help, and we can funnel that. We have seen that some, and we have reached out to our friends in the AAAs and ADRCs and reminded them that they need to provide that information. So they are welcome. They can certainly email that. They can email the DA response team. I mean, we're all meeting very regularly in problem solving situations like that. So yeah, thanks, Kim. It's a good question. And then I think Katie had a question as well about what was included in the IPP implementation portion of the waiver amendment. So Katie, I think I'm going to answer that here in a little bit, if that's okay. I'd like to, and if I don't, you call me out and we'll come back to it. Okay.
Thanks, Holly.
Yeah.
And then Holly, it looks like Karen, she said, can I clarify on opening on H&W the slot that opened due to I don't know, Karen, if you want to explain. I don't know if I'm
It might be easier just to say this.
Yeah, I don't know if I know what you're saying.
So are you saying that when somebody ages out so they're on the health and wellness and they age out now and go to pathways, that slot can now be reassigned to someone on the health and wellness? Like, so currently they get held for a whole year.
No, that's not what I was
No.
saying. That's a great question, Karen, but
that would be lovely. But
no, I was actually talking about the wait list. So as people are invited to the wait list, if they decline it. So if someone's invited to the health and wellness waiver and they decline that for whatever reason, or let's say they passed away, right? We can use that slot for someone else because that slot has never been used. Okay. So that's what I was referencing before. We are not able to reuse
Okay, so that
slots
when
in
somebody
that.
ages out and goes to health and wellness, from health and wellness to pathways, that slot literally has to stay empty until next July, correct?
Yes.
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. All right. Because
Good questions.
yeah, because that just always seems bad, right? That there is a slot that has to hang open for literally, like, we've got a lot of them that are 11 months that we knew somebody aged out, but their slot stays open. So, okay, thank you for clarifying.
All right. So can we move to the next slide, please, Jess? Okay. So what you see here is a kind of a waiver, a desired waiver amendment timeline. Targeted for July of 24, or effective date of July 24 and November of 25. No, that's wrong. July of 25. My apologies. That's a typo. July of 25 and November of 25. My apologies there. So this just provides a schedule so that you can see kind of the flow or the timeline we have to complete additional waiver amendments. I want to note that there are some very targeted areas that we have identified for the 2 upcoming sets of amendments. And it's important to note that the amendments and renewals identified in this slide for July of 2025 effective date really get us to that implementation of the level of care assessment review. And then the amendments identified here for November will consist of additional cleanup items and alignment that have items that have been identified since we have integrated the waivers. So we anticipate this additional amendment package with November effective date we will use to kind of button up some things. And we'll talk about it a little bit on the next slide. Once we get through, or as we work through this timeline, our focus and intention is really going to be on waiver reset. We're not really looking at waiver redesign in 2025. We're looking to button up some of those areas that we know we need to provide additional alignment, essentially, and implement LCAR. So noting that, we continue engagement with stakeholders, and we'll be expanding those engagements as we really continue on this trajectory of what is waiver reset as opposed to really waiver redesign. If we can move to the next slide, Jess, I want to share some things that really are desired 2025 waiver changes. Again, more cleanup, very targeted areas. The LCAR, level of care assessment representative. Katie, that is, yeah, I don't know where we got that name, but it's level of care assessment representative. And that is the, I will tell you, I did not name it. That is the implementation of a vendor that will do nursing facility level of care assessments. And that will be implemented July of 2025. So that will include pathways and health and wellness and TBI. Then for July, the new health and wellness level of care tool for children that, again, we have communicated about our goal to do that in July of 2025. And then we also would like to revise slot tracking and updated enrollee counts. Those amendments need to include information on the House Bill 1342 or implementation of the DSP registry and training, eligibility assessment alignment that I kind of talked about a minute ago or a few minutes ago about, really looking at how do we design or how do we utilize assessments that are streamlined in a way that it's less burdensome on individuals and families. We all know we're looking at the expansion of the self-direction program. And then tech infrastructure updates. We've already talked about the fact that we are back to using 2 different case management IT systems. We have CAMS for the health and wellness and TBI, and then we have the BEADS portal for the FSW and CIH. So again, we are looking at how we can facilitate some updates with regard to our case management IT systems. When we think about desired waiver changes in terms of services and service definitions, again, we're really looking at further alignment of service definitions across all the waivers, the health and wellness, TBI, FSW, and CIH. We did a lot of that when we, for July 1 of this year. However, there were some alignment we did not, that we still need to button up in based on some things we've learned since we've made it through this, or as we've navigated through the waiver integration. We also are looking at services for those with complex needs that will be informed by the innovation pilot projects. Expansion of services that we've talked about that support competitive integrated employment, as that's part of our employment transformation plan. And then structured family caregiving, looking at that very closely, again, to see how we can implement or make some modifications that are informed by some of the innovation pilot projects. Next slide. So as we consider waiver reset.
Holly, you've got just about 1 minute, just FYI.
Okay.
If they have any questions, I might save them to the parking lot, okay?
Okay, thank you. As we consider waiver reset, our goal, as I said, as we've talked about before, is really to create a new cross-disability waivers to better meet the needs with greater flexibility for individuals. So the waiver reset will build upon and expand the goals of waiver redesign to really reflect that post-COVID reality. And the new populations being supported by BEADS. So we will share more information broadly before the end of this calendar year, including opportunities for input, and we will incorporate the feedback received and all the waiver enhancements that we've completed or will be completed through 2025. I do want to stress, related to Katie's question about the IPPs, these changes are in the very early planning stages, so we will need extensive input from the community. That includes individuals, families, providers, advocacy orgs, anyone that has input. So again, I think my minute is up.
Holly, I can jump in too real quick on that.
Okay, please do. Thank you.
In the next 30 seconds. I think Katie too, like as we're working with our partners at HSRI, like we're going to have kind of a report that will most likely feed into, like it'll, like Holly said, there's some things that are right kind of at the forefront, right? And then there's other things that some of those projects have given us that it's not necessarily a waiver definition change, but it's more kind of resources and then maybe things that are coming down the pike. So I think that's where sort of their end report and kind of their evaluation will sort of, I don't know how we'll do it, but whether it's like an addendum or something, as it'll sort of be part of that waiver reset, et cetera. So more to come, but yeah, it's figuring out that fine balance because there are things that are going to happen sooner, right? Most likely than others. Okay. I'm going to move it to Teresa. Second, there you go.
All right, thanks, Jessica. All right, we can go ahead to the first real slide here. All right, so some of this will look somewhat familiar, just a kind of a quick status update on about 5 or 6 items, and then I have some additional or new updates that we can talk through briefly. So just in terms of our staffing status right now, we're still very blessed to have pretty solid retention, again, especially compared to where we came from. We have 205 VR counselor positions. And we were able to shift a couple positions over to counselor roles to just bolster our counselor number up there just a little bit over the last couple of months. So 205 VR counselors, 10 of those are vacant, which represents about 5% of all counselor positions. We are proceeding to fill all 10, and 18 staff are what we call in trainee status, which really means that they've been hired within the last year. So they were vacancies either earlier this year or latter part of last year. And we look at that number in addition to vacancies just to get a more holistic view of our overall retention over the course of a year. So those 18 in trainee status represent 9% of our positions. Next slide. As of, we pulled the data, what, about a week and a half, 2 weeks ago, something like that, 10 days ago. I think you all know of our 3 disability service priority categories. Just one is now closed and impacted by a wait list. That's about 2% of eligible folks going on to that wait list, which means 98% of folks applying determined eligible are being served without going on a wait list. We've pulled people off of that wait list over the course of 14 different phased releases. The most recent was July 1st. We do those quarterly. We've moved over 4,000 off of the waiting list through those 14 releases. And this is just a really quick snapshot of the current status of those folks coming off of the wait list over the course of the last few years. 26% are currently in services or received services. Of those, again, about a quarter of those have already exited with employment, and the others remain in services. There are just a few, less than 2%, that we're still in process of contacting. We do a number of outreach attempts before we, determine that we just are not able to reach anybody. And so we're finishing up those contacts with just a small portion, mostly from that July release. 22% we did reach, and they declined services they no longer needed or wanted or desired services. 38%, that's the group that we were not able to locate, did not respond to our outreach attempts. And again, we do multiple outreach attempts in various different methods. And 13% we reached and were closed for a whole host of other reasons. They may have relocated and sought services elsewhere. They may have retired. Occasionally, there is someone who has passed away. There could be some incarceration, medical issues, a whole host of reasons that a case was opened and then just closed out already. Next slide. So no change here since the last update. Again, one category closed. We do anticipate having our final release of that category 3 in October, and we'll be out of the order of selection at that point in time. Next slide. We are very closely monitoring our growth in the program, our applicants, our participants served. If you're able to see the slide here, you're probably immediately noticing some substantial growth in applicants. We've pulled the numbers for really the last 3 state fiscal years, so you can see the trend line there. But in general, we've had a 22% increase in applicants over the course of the last 2 years. So that's almost 5,800 new VR applicants in state fiscal year 24, which just closed in June, compared to 4,740 new applicants in state fiscal year 22, again, 2 years ago. So that's some pretty solid growth in applicants. Our staff are feeling that growth, doing their best to still keep up as best they can with a lot of the initiatives that we have around rapid engagement, getting people in and to service plan more quickly than the federal timeliness standards even that are laid out for us. Just very quickly here, pre-employment transition services applicants, a little bit of growth here, nothing like we're seeing with VR applicants, but still some steady increases, about a 2.5% increase in pre-ETS applicants over the last 2 years. All right, next slide. The number currently on the wait list, again, this data was pulled on August 12th. 239 was the total number of eligible individuals on that category 3 wait list. 114 of those were new to the wait list in state fiscal year 24. So about half of them were new and half of them were on there probably from applications just in the prior year or so. Most of the folks left on the wait list are folks who come in and applied in the last couple of years. And again, our final wait list release is on target for October, which will bring our wait list down to 0. Next slide. A snapshot of the total folks actively receiving services on any given day. This particular day was August 12th. Again, we had 10,572 individuals actively receiving VR services. My spiel is that number does not include people in application or eligibility status, does not include anyone in those pre-planned statuses, does not include anyone on the wait list, does not include pre-ets, all of those things. It's just folks who have an active service plan, and that snapshot was 10,572. I pulled a snapshot when I presented to this group, I believe in April, and you can see again about a 5% increase, about 500 or so bigger snapshots today than it was about 4 months ago. So very much in line with that growth we showed in applicants. Of course, this number fluctuates every day. This data again is a single point in time. So I did also want to just capture the total number of individuals. You know, people come and go in VR. So the total number of individuals that again actively receive services in the state fiscal year 24. Quick caveat, we are still validating this number. We just submitted our final reporting August 15th and are waiting for our feds to review and identify anything they may see as discrepancies from the data we've submitted each quarter. So this number is not totally final yet, but we're fairly confident that it's somewhere around that 14,000. Here on the slide, I have 14,119, which again, you can see is a pretty healthy increase from the total individuals that we have served in previous years. In fact, about a 16% increase over the last 2 years of folks receiving services. Okay, next slide. Okay, Jessica, any comments came in before I move into the additional updates? I think just some, oh, thank you.
Sure.
Yes.
Just, great job. Some kudos. Leadership,
Wonderful.
Great job. BR leadership and staff from Derek. Great job from Lisa. And Karen, wow, this is super exciting. Great job. So no questions so far.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. Thank you. Exciting, but again, a little hard to take a breath right now, right? Our staff are definitely feeling that growth, and it's very positive and it's very good, but being very mindful of, trying to stretch our capacity to address that growth. A few other updates here. If you looked at the slides, you'll see the update or kind of where we are for this last almost completed federal fiscal year. The federal fiscal year will end in September. Every August, here's your little VR reallotment lesson if you haven't heard it before. Every August, usually around August 15th, there is an opportunity for state VR agencies around the nation. There are 77 of us to participate in reallotment. And what that really means is that if we have VR formula funds, we can also do this with other grants we have, our supported employment grants, our older blind grants, any of those grants that are issued through the U.S. Department of Education. If we have those federal formula fund grants that we don't believe we're going to be able to fully access, that could be for a variety of reasons, maybe, not having enough non-federal or state match to do that. Maybe it's that like during the pandemic, a lot of states found that their service expenses were just down and they didn't have the need for the full formula grants. There's an opportunity to identify that before the year ends. And the benefit of reallotment is that return dollars can then be picked up by other VR agencies across the nation, and that money stays in the VR program. Alternatively, if a state does not identify a reallotment amount and just goes about their budget period and leaves money unspent at the end of the full cycle, that money is just reabsorbed back to the federal treasury. It leaves the VR program nationally. Another, I always like to put a positive spin on things. Another potential positive benefits that we are also experiencing with reallotment is that it's presented the opportunity for our federal oversight agency to issue competitive grant applications, Disability Innovation Fund applications. We have one of those. We received one of those grants in 2022, and we're able to get back some of those return dollars without that match requirement. And I'll provide you a little bit of an update on our on that grant, our Support Employment Plus grant. We are still reallotting a fair, you'll see here, $22 million is no small number. That is a reduction from the amount that we returned the prior year. So a little bit of progress. That is due to a couple of things. I'll talk a little bit about some of our, in addition to state allotment, VR agencies can also take a few steps to generate our own non-federal match to help draw down more of that federal formula grant. And we're doing that, and there's more to come on that. So that is one way that we're able to pull a little bit more money down. Second, the VR program nationally, there's been an increase in reallotted funds over the last few years. Not to keep pointing the finger at COVID, but it did not do any favors there. And so there's a lot of national attention on that. And a lot of things happen between that and this decision. But one of the impacts of that is that the VR program, the VR funding authorized for 2024, again, nationally, did not include the annual COLA, that annual increase that we've been kind of accustomed to over the last few years. So what that meant is our 24 formula grant looked pretty similar to our 23 formula grant instead of the big increase each year that we've been seeing. And of course, our state allotment has remained relatively flat. We did get a little bit of an increase. This initiated for the first time this federal fiscal year because of the state compensation adjustments that were made at the end of 2022. So variety of reasons there, we were able to see that little bit of adjustment in our return. I do want to just touch on briefly a little bit about how we're generating some non-federal dollars. Some folks are already aware we partner with the Department of Workforce Development through PREETs. So we authorize through contracts PREETs dollars to a dozen or so different contractors. Most of those are our VR employment service providers to carry out pre-employment transition services. We're using our allocation to provide the appropriate match in order to set aside that 15% reserve on those contracts. In addition, we're actually spending more than our 15% earmark on PREETs, in part because of our relationship with DWD and the Jobs for America's Graduates program. So DWD is providing us a match every year in order for us to draw additional federal dollars to help support specifically students with disabilities to access those JAG programs, those really dropout prevention, employment preparation programs. The competencies lay over PREETs activities very closely, and we continue that partnership. We are anticipating growth in those dollars as we move into the next year. So DWD is currently growing their JAG program, and that, of course, it presents opportunity for more students with disabilities to access JAG at new schools around the state. So we are anticipating a little bit of uptick in the match that they're providing, and then the federal dollars we're able to draw as we move into the next year. We are also hopefully in the final stages of updating our agreement with Division of Mental Health and Addiction. And the reason we're updating it is because we're adding some cost sharing to that agreement where they're going to provide, again, signed agreement is not in place yet, but the plan is that they will provide the non-federal match for 2 of our staff that are specifically working with folks with mental health conditions through our individual placement and support project. So very exciting there. We also initiated a contract with Hamilton County, who's providing a match to us, again, in order to draw down some funds to support some career exploration and placement and business, kind of business to business technical assistance throughout Hamilton County. It's a very young and new pilot. I hope to talk about it more in the coming, several months over the course of the year. We've got some kinks to work out, but I think it has some promise to maybe be something we can replicate to other counties down the road. And then the big news is that we are in final stages of putting together establishment projects. Some of you were part of that back in 2017 to 2021. We are looking to embark upon another round of establishment projects. We've been working closely again with our federal oversight agency to frame the scope of work and the allowable use of the dollars. I think we have a pretty solid approach, and we're working on some kind of a procurement application type of process that we hope will go out this fall. And then will result in some contracts with some of our employment service providers.
Am I the only one not frozen? Oh, Karen, no, you're not frozen.
I would say I only hear you and Karen or see you guys moving. All of FSSA is
I was
They
just
are
gonna
all
say.
frozen.
Employment services model
So-
and approach.
Gosh. There we go.
Teresa, you froze on us for the last 30 seconds.
The
This is Derek.
state people just froze. We were going to talk among ourselves for a few minutes, but decided that probably was rude. So
Uh-oh,
We're
I don't know what
back.
happened.
I don't know, is that just me that lost it?
It all froze for me.
Everything
too.
went
I
away.
put back on.
Me as well.
One second.
So
That was the
Teresa,
good
if you
stuff,
said
too.
something, Teresa, if you said something wise in that time, we missed it.
Surely I did.
I'm
Um,
guessing you did too.
What did you last hear about establishment projects? Did you hear anything about establishment projects?
You had just started establishment projects, Teresa.
I said many wise things then. Okay.
Right.
So do I have like 5 or 10 more minutes, Jessica? Am I good to talk about this a little bit?
Kyle, who never
Yeah,
has.
you have
one
10 you have
left,
like
said
10
Yeah, I'm nodding my
yes.
head.
Okay. All right. I'll keep it short and sweet. So does anybody remember we did establishment projects back in 2017 to 2021? I see some head nods. Okay. So sort of similar approach, but a little bit of a different objective. So this time around, we're really trying to provide those matched, there will be a match requirement just as there was before, but it's a pretty good match ratio, as you know, and then enables, of course, Indiana to pull down more federal dollars and turn those over to these establishment contractors. And the objective this time around is to support program growth. So you're all familiar with that catch-22 challenge, right? Man, if I just had more staff, I could take more referrals, right? Or get these people off my internal provider kind of waiting period. But darn it, I can't hire more staff until the referrals come, right? So hopefully the establishment project is really the answer to that, right? It can have those dollars in there to bring on some new staff, get them up and running, to start pulling down the fee for service. And then hopefully over time, the positions are sustained because we're past that catch-22 situation. Okay, so we're really looking for employment service providers who are positioned for growth. And by that, what I really mean is, they have a game plan, right, of recruiting and hopefully sustaining staff in order to either, it's probably multiple of the above, serve people maybe faster or more timely, maybe get them in and assigned to an employment specialist more quickly, serve more people in their current coverage area, or potentially if we have a need in a new coverage area, expand, that coverage area to serve more people through a broader coverage area. So that will be the main focus, is to really help providers offset maybe the costs of that growth, get past that catch-22, and hopefully bring on anywhere between like 1 and 5 new employment services staff that will specifically work with VR participants, direct services. We also plan to allow training costs for those new staff, and then equipment. RSA will allow us one device, one laptop, desktop, whatever, computer item per new staff, which is a new from where we were last time with establishment. So I don't know if you heard We hope to get this, it'll be a competitive application process, and we are targeting getting that out this fall. But I did just want to give you a quick heads up because we're excited, a little scared, also excited. These are pretty challenging to administer. So we've applied a lot of lessons learned from the last go round to try to keep things a little as simple as we can get away with, I will say, and still meet all of the federal requirements. More to come. All right, I'm going to breeze through this data. Career counseling information and referral, and Sean, feel free to chime in on this too. We went ahead and did kind of a very manual sort of deep dive on a sampling here. So we continue to partner with the ARC of Indiana and Self Advocates to carry out career counseling and information and referral, lovingly called CCIR or CC and INR, for folks employed at sub-minimum wage across Indiana. We did a baseline survey in 2016 when this first became a requirement to conduct CCIR under the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act. At that point in time, there were almost 4,000 individuals employed at sub-minimum wage per what was reported from those 14C entities in the survey. We are at, I mean, Kyle, I'll look to you a little bit, probably around a third of that today in terms of the number of people still employed at sub-minimum wage. So massive change there, massive drop in the number of people employed at sub-minimum wage. A big change for this last state fiscal year that just closed is that we shifted more to a one-on-one delivery of those CCIR services, which I think has been helpful. And then in state fiscal year 24, from my count, going back and looking at the 12 different reports from the year, almost 1,200 individuals completed CCINR. Thanks, Kyle. So he's saying around 1,300 to 14 individuals currently. Yep. There's always people absent when SAI and the ARC goes out. So we'll pick those people up in another one, but that jives pretty closely, almost 1,200 people who completed CCIR in the last state fiscal year. Okay, next slide. I do have a little more data on this. We looked at.
Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
I will say doing going from the whole group setting to doing the group setting, then the one-on-ones is a lot better because people are understanding better now than they were in a whole group setting.
That's awesome. That's great, Sean. Thank you. We went ahead and pulled, did again, a fairly deep dive review. We used April as our sample, those who completed CCIR in April, and we ran this data just really last week. That seemed to be a pretty good sample size for a couple of reasons. One, it was a good size sample, represented about 15% of individuals who received CCIR in the year. And enough time has passed between April and August that it provided an opportunity for individuals who hadn't already applied to VR to maybe perhaps make that application after that CCIR was completed in April. So there were 182 individuals who completed CCIR in April. That particular sample was 8 different 14C entities that SAI visited that particular month. Of those, almost half, 46%, either had a current VR open case or had applied or had been to VR at some point in the past. And this went back to, when I say some point in the past, that some point in the past is since 2017, sometime since 2017, or a current case. The breakdown of those 182, including, so everybody, the full 182, again, about half of them had come to VR, but of the full group, about 8% exited VR with competitive integrated employment. 15% had an open case now. 23% had been to VR and had a closed case and left without employment. And then again, a little bit over half had never, at least as far back as 2017, come into VR. And then that same breakdown, but just looking at those who did have a VR case, again, that was 46% or 84 individuals of the 182 who completed CCIR in April. So of the 84 who have been in VR, 18% are working or exited with employment or were currently in employment status. 33%, so exactly a third, had an open active VR case right now as we speak, and about almost half had an exit without employment. Now, interestingly, of those 49% who did receive VR but exited, 44% of them were pretty old cases. They were folks who had come in and exited more than 5 years ago. We also kind of looked at the 8 different 14C holders that had individuals receive CCIR that particular month, and a lot of difference in terms of what portion of their subminimum wage workers had been through VR. And just a couple quick examples. One 14C holder had 34 employees complete CCIR, and 59% of them have or had an open VR case. And most of them for that particular provider were open VR cases. So they're pretty committed, right? They're probably doing a lot more beyond CCIR, right? They're probably doing a lot in-house to promote employment. Another site with more employees, 57, who completed CCIR, had about a third, 34%, that had or have an open VR case. Most of those actually were not active. They had been closed cases. So very, very different between just those two kind of quick examples. Of note, though, all 8 14C sites that had visits that month had some employees with a current or at least a previous VR case. I think I have one final slide, and I think I have 1 minute. I just wanted to also quickly share an update on Supported Employment Plus. That's that grant that I mentioned. I've talked about that before. I won't belabor it. But it's kind of related to the work that we're seeing with CCIR, and very related to the many, many initiatives that are supporting the transition of individuals from 14C employment or sub-minimum wage employment to competitive integrated employment. So we've been up and running in implementation mode for almost a year with SE Plus. Within that year, we've had our VR counselor SE Plus liaisons have a regular presence in those pilot sites, those 14C sites, and we have 113 individuals enrolled. They have service plans who are in the SE Plus project. So that currently represents about a third of those pilot site 14C employees. And again, got them in application status through eligibility to services, about 113 folks within about a year and counting. This number goes up every day. We're expanding to another SE Plus pilot site this state fiscal year. So that will also increase our enrollment over the course of the next year or so. Of those 113 who've been enrolled, 18 have already received or found employment. The average wages for those 18 is $11.21. The range is $8.25 to $14 an hour. And then average weekly hours is 14, the range being 2 to 24. Walmart for the win on both the upper wage and hours there. Just kind of fun side notes. We also have trained 5 peer support specialists who are focused on employment. We're super excited about these guys. They are onboarded, they're hired by our pilot sites, and we are authorizing fee-for-service peer specialist services for them to carry out with our SE Plus participants. So would love to share more on that at another time. And then Kyle, here's where if you want to chime in, I know we're running short on time. Our SE Plus project manager, Will Coltrion, is serving not only as the project manager for SE Plus, but a liaison for many DDRS efforts around promoting and empowering people to pursue competitive integrated employment. I don't know, Kyle, if you want to chime in a little bit on the kind of the touch points that you and Will have and some of the support he's providing.
Yeah, he is providing support in a couple of different places for sure right now. And as the SE Plus project continues to mature for the next couple of years. And I anticipate that growing quite a bit. Will has been able to help us evaluate and provide some technical assistance to grantees for the transformation grant. So finding ways for us to really align some of the efforts that are going on in that sphere with the work that's going on in the SE Plus projects. And then just additionally, I think bringing Will into those conversations that we're having at a higher level with the State Employment Leadership Network, things like that has been, it's really critical. So really excited to have him kind of engaging on those pieces. Thanks.
Hey, Teresa. Sorry. As you're talking about Will, as Kyle and you're talking about his role, I can't help but think about some of the work that he's done with the SE Plus, and particularly he's done some great videos. I don't know, it might be nice to share those or one of those, a sampling, if you will.
Sure.
At an upcoming DDRS Advisory Council. Kyle, I think the two of you, it's really a part of our overall systems transformation. Just planting a seed while I think of it.
I think that's great. That's all I have. Thank you, guys. Teresa?
Yeah.
I don't see anything in the parking lot for this. I know Kelly had something that we'll add at the end about going a little bit back, but.
And I think we might address that in our section, Jessica.
True. Yeah.
Well, I think that, as we thought about some of the division alignment conversation that we wanted to have today, it was really nice to have both Holly and Teresa's discussions kind of as a preamble to that and supporting that. As we kind of jump in here for a little bit, as a reminder, a couple of the things that you heard from Teresa and Holly that are fairly relevant to our continued transformation work around competitive integrated employment. You heard from Teresa the huge success around ending order selection in calendar year 2024. We're getting that CCAR data in and beginning to evaluate that. She highlighted that significant reduction that we have seen since that 2016 baseline and the number of individuals who are receiving sub-minimum wage in those settings. Also beginning to examine that data on really tying CCR data to what we're seeing in terms of open VR cases. So evaluating what that connectivity looks like and seeing if there are avenues and opportunities for us to improve the rate of CCIR folks indicating that they'd like a referral to VR, the number of those folks leading to an open VR case. And I think even as we continue to open up those categories for order selection, we should be in a better spot to really be able to see some increases in those CCAR supports leading to VR referrals. Also, again, just what we're learning from the SE project sites. And Teresa, I think as we kind of talk through some division alignment, if there's anything else that you didn't get a chance to share in your session because you felt like you had to kind of get your time squeezed, please jump in around SE Plus for sure. Holly, again, waiver updates that are really relevant to this discussion include those enhancements that we're looking for those existing waiver supports, both in terms of evaluating service definitions and what kind of guidance we can provide to specific providers, including case managers, around their role in supporting employment. We can continue to refine that as we target those changes in the end of 2025. And as we sort of continue to plan for a bigger picture, the ending of funding for facility pre-vocational services in 2027. So all of that really, I think, highlights that we are in a fairly significant period of transformation and change, both in terms of services and supports, but also I think also in the messaging and the cultural paradigm that we're trying to effectuate and supporting within the support settings themselves. And we're seeing, again, some observable shifts as well in terms of individual preferences for their supports, right? So again, seeing that monthly CCR data, watching the reduction in sheltered work utilization, also taking a look at those data requests, the CCR data outcomes. Right now, we're looking at kind of a monthly range in terms of requests for a VR referral from those monthly CCR reports, ranging between 23% to 37% for calendar year 2024. We're also seeing an increase in rehabilitation service utilization. And right now, the data indicates, and this isn't just an Indiana trend, certainly it's a national trend, that immediate growth in rehabilitation service utilization really maps on and mirrors those reductions that we're seeing in facility pre-vocational service utilization, either from individual choice or from providers closing their settings. So that's another place that we're closely monitoring in terms of those trends. We anticipated some of that, certainly, but I think we're at a point where it's critical for us to begin to look at that rehabilitation service as a part of the continuum of employment services and supports. We're also continuing to engage with providers, case managers, and state staff on really working through messaging around employment first principles, what that means, doing some myth busting around what employment first doesn't mean, and also, again, starting to draw some of those connections for folks about how the division understands all of our programming to be around whole person support, right? That's in part where we have really leveraged Life Course as a framework for envisioning how our supports really support the whole person to live the life that they want and that they envision. There are some indications I'll just share with the council in some of those settings that we have shared some of this information, including not just kind of technical details around service changes, but some of that larger cultural change messaging, indications that there certainly remains confusion for some folks about what their role is and understanding how they play a part in someone's employment journey. So all that is to say that I wanted to kind of pull that together to then share with you some of our priorities for the next year, specifically with our use of our technical assistance resources that we're receiving from the State Employment Leadership Network. The first thing that we're working on is really evaluating division policy and process to streamline coordination of services. So a couple of ways that we've identified already looking at that is really sitting down and looking at how we can formalize some service sequencing guidance across programs within the division. And certainly there are other states that can be examples for that, but we really are going to work with our SELN technical assistance team to drill down to the specifics around Indiana's programs and supports to do some of that formalized service sequencing so that both our providers, our staff, as well as individuals using our services can understand how to leverage the supports and braid and sequence those across division programs. Additionally, leveraging that data analysis of those cross-program outcomes to drive decision-making. So Teresa highlighted some of those initial stabs around taking a look at what data is being shared, the data that's being received around CCR, what's it actually doing in terms of VR cases. That's just, I think it's the tip of the iceberg in terms of what we want to do to leverage that cross-program data. The second thing that we're really prioritizing with the SELN team is elevating the messaging that employment is everybody's job, right? And I think that's a place that we can certainly do some work with service definitions and with our policy guidance, but I think there's a larger cultural change messaging question that will involve and require input and engagement from, I think, the folks sitting around this table on the council. And finally, the last element that we are prioritizing for the next year is, again, monitoring and kind of watching day habilitation utilization trends. There's certainly a national conversation among states and among our technical assistance resources around how we envision day habilitation and those kinds of services as drivers for competitive integrated employment outcomes. So those are, really it's going to be critical. And this is a tie-in back to, I think, a little bit of what Teresa was talking about as we imagine this system and the division supports moving towards the future. Really, it'll be critical for us to envision how individuals who are utilizing and receiving supports in day habilitation and other service settings also have access to those CCIR-like supports. And I think that's one of the things that we're really evaluating right now is as we continue to see the trend of the reduction in sheltered work settings, that CCIR service really is targeted at those folks who are in some minimum wage employment. There's a whole host of other individuals, though, who really deserve to have access to those conversations and to that level of support in terms of imagining and exploring employment. So that's just a couple highlights. Teresa, Holly, other folks certainly who are part of the SELN project team, please jump in.
I think you got it, Kyle. I'm glad you mentioned kind of that sequencing, rating of services. I think that's really, really important, and we need to do be intentional in helping people see how that could look, right? How does a service when someone is 15 and maybe receiving services through waiver or school, what are they doing at that stage in the game that's kind of shaping that next step? And when does VR kind of kick in? I don't think there's a risk of too much employment service. Nobody has capacity to duplicate by any means, but I think we're going to find that it's actually a positive that there may be the opportunity for individuals who are not yet in VR to be able to get some services that help point them right and prepare them toward employment before they get to VR, or that complement what they may have access to when they come to VR. I don't think that's a duplication. I think that's a more holistic approach to helping pave the way for individuals. So I'm excited about that sequencing work. I look forward to diving in on that.
Yeah, I think it's going to be critical in terms of moving the needle for us internally. Certainly there's other pieces that are a little more external, but very excited about that. I didn't see if there are any questions, Jessica.
Derek, can I ask a question?
Yeah, certainly.
Just a simple question, I think. Well, probably it's never going to be simple, right? You had mentioned the mapping of the data or people going to DayHab. I'm curious what your thoughts are about those systems and maybe what needs they have to not necessarily to motivate people towards employment, but to educate them and help people remember, even in DayHab, you can have other choices in that. So is there expectation around those programs to be talking about employment or helping people realize that that's an option and that there are pathways to that still? Is there a coordinated effort around that? And maybe what's needed if not?
Yeah, I'll jump in. Certainly others will have insight as well, but I think historically waiver supports within an agency that might operate both waiver supports and vocational rehabilitation supports, right? There has historically for a lot of those agencies been a pretty intense siloing between those programs. Certainly there has not been, in my experience, in a lot of providers, a lot of attention paid to building up the capacity and the knowledge base of folks that are perhaps rehabilitation providers, on the ground staff, to talk about or explore or really even kind of imagine their role in supporting someone's education journey. We have, through the transformation grants, been incentivizing and supporting providers to do a couple of things around staff capacity, particularly targeted rehabilitation. So a lot of providers have taken advantage of training opportunities that are available, through APSI or through IADC, through other avenues that we would typically kind of understand to be within the purview of employment service providers, training their waiver service staff on those same principles. Also, internally doing some cross training, or at least some providing some support for staff to really work across those traditional silos. So certainly within the transformation grant and the collaborative effort that we've had for the last couple of years, there's been support for that as agencies want to take advantage of that. Beyond that, I think that still remains a question. Certainly if anyone else has insight into that, I think that there's a need for us to continue to imagine, to build up support for staff on waiver services, on how they talk about that. I think certainly the career exploration and planning service that we've baked into the waiver begins to start that conversation a little bit. But as I indicated, as we discussed, I think looking at and evaluating some of those core traditionally non-work services and how they can be drivers of employment rather than just sort of something wholly separate, I think is going to be a critical effort for the next couple of years.
Yeah, I would just add, Kyle, I think, Derek, to your question too, as Kyle mentioned earlier, some of that is helping to ensure that everyone, providers, and even within our agencies, understand that supporting people to explore competitive integrated employment is everybody's job, right? It's not just employment, those employment service providers or, the staff that are job coaches. It really is all of our jobs to support people in exploring competitive integrated employment, which is not something our day service programs as a whole have viewed as their responsibility. So I appreciate everything Kyle said, and I think you had a great question, Derek.
And maybe just one last follow-up, and I'll be very general here, but if you feel that there are ways, or if there are ways that we can support that too in our work, it'd be great to hear. I mean, I think it's going to take a community to really push that, and being part of that, I think we're committed to doing that. So let's talk, and I'm sure that others around the table would be more than willing to as well. There's things we can do better, more effectively to hit that. We're happy to do it.
Hey, Karen, I'm going to move you to the end, okay? So we can keep going.
It's really about that, just that migration.
Okay.
So it's not
okay. Okay, I'm going to move on to Kelly's. I think going to touch on our first, and then myself on our first, the work we're doing around dual diagnosis. So Kelly, I'm going to turn, if that works for you.
Yep, I can get myself unmuted. I think all of you are aware that we have several initiatives and projects, that have been funded through the American Rescue Plan or ARPA funds or COVID, whatever one might want to call that. And one of those projects that we really haven't touched upon in great detail over the past year or so is one that we labeled our dual diagnosis capacity building project. This is a standalone project, and it is not a part of or included in our innovation pilot projects. As part of this initiative, we have worked alongside our partners at NASDS, the National Association for State Directors of Developmental Disability Services. That is a mouthful. To receive technical assistance, not just from NASDS team members, but from national subject matter experts. We have really been looking at this two-pronged capacity building to support those individuals with the most complex needs, if you will, from first a systems capacity lens. What is it that we need to do at the systems or state level, policy, procedure, practices, service definition, to improve our approach to and the outcomes achieved for individuals with complex needs or those with that are dually diagnosed. So Kelly, you had asked a question earlier in the chat about the upcoming waiver amendments, and does that mean we're not going to be doing anything around behavioral services and support? It does not. That is one of the things that are on our target as we think about alignment in these early stages, is how might we move toward building that system capacity. So we will be looking at how we have a service definition that's referred to as behavior management. But looking at that, what can we do in the lens of those service definitions? It's not that we necessarily need to add new services, but I think look at how we approach supporting people with complex needs. And that could be adding services, but really first just looking at that definition. And to Kyle's point, as a whole, we've really been looking at how do we just better align all that we do to support the person being at the center of their lives and living the life that they determine. And that is one that is of the community, that's inclusive of work, and obviously supporting people with complex needs in an appropriate fashion is integral to all facets of a successful community life. So that's one piece of it. The other thing, though, is to build capacity as we think about providers of service. And by capacity, we're not necessarily talking about we need more people doing it. What we want to do is improve the capacity of the providers that we have or yet to come to support those individuals with those complex needs, those intensely complex needs that require a different level and great deal of knowledge and support, right? Bringing in that approach of trauma-informed care, positive approaches and supports. So how can we build the capacity of our provider network to support that? And so we're going to be exploring how to do that in a multitude of ways, and that may align with some of our system capacity pieces, how we do it. But the other exciting piece of that is we did have these funds set aside, these ARPA funds, for our dual diagnosis capacity building project. And many of you should have received an email. We are launching across the state very soon trainings that are focused on maximizing positive outcomes and using positive behavioral supports and approaches to support individuals in living their best life. And I hate to just say, supporting individuals that are dually diagnosed. This really applies across the whole. So Kyle, you referenced this. We've got to change the culture. This is a cultural change. We have to change how we look at it, how we're supporting individuals, how we're training, and how do we ensure an ongoing sustainable approach to training and supporting quality service delivery and supports for individuals with complex needs. So you're going to receive a lot of information about that. Jessica, I think you can talk a little bit more, because while I say this is not an innovation pilot project, obviously it has tethers to some of what we're doing within our innovation pilot projects. So to Holly's point, to Kyle's point, we are going to be using what we have learned from those demonstration projects or those innovation pilot projects to inform our approach at systems capacity building, at provider capacity building, as we think about resetting, right? Waiver reset and rethinking how we support our current customer base. It's changed dramatically. And we need to find ways to now support people with complex needs, because they are a part of our communities, as they should be, where historically, decades ago, they were housed in institutions. We've made that shift. Now we have to put the system in place and put the providers in place that we can support people to be successful in their goal to live their lives in the community. So that's Jessica. I'm going to turn it over to you. We'll be providing more information on this as we move through it. You can tell I'm really excited about this. It's something I'm extremely passionate about. This ties into what we're doing with institutional modernization, thinking differently about how we support people in supervised group living, or better known as group homes. Thinking about how we support not just adults, but kids with complex needs. This truly is across the lifespan. We don't want to wait till someone's 15, 18, and now experiencing difficulties in their lives because of quote unquote what we want to refer to as behaviors, right? We all have behaviors, and I won't get on my soapbox. So, but how do we begin to do this and work with all of our systems early on and work with families? Jessica, thank you.
Yeah, I'm going to save, Kelly has a question, Hartman, but Kelly, I'm going to get to you after, put you in the parking lot. Okay. So park your car there for a second. We'll have time, I promise. I'm being very cognizant of time. So, yes, as Kelly mentioned, I think just reiterating, there was special funding set aside for that dual diagnosis work. It's obviously informing the IPPs. I mean, as we have some IPPs around behavioral supports, right? And looking at what that could look like moving forward. So it's informing those projects, obviously, and connected. I think that's what Kelly was getting at too. Okay, I'm going to just move on real quick. Just want to highlight some of our other projects that we've got going on that are not necessarily behavioral focused or dual diagnosis focused, but just some that I want to share. The first is Volunteers of America. Is their title of their project is Belonging Matters. And this is really looking at community connections. And for folks with disabilities, what does that look like within their own community? And taking, some of their interests in meeting up with other folks that might have similar interests that don't have disabilities, right? And just looking at those natural supports. And this is Rose right here. And her project was actually, or her interest, it's actually kind of, I've never heard of this, but it's coffee stain art. Which is super interesting to me, and also dance. And so she is a not necessarily teenager, but young adult so what she did is she partnered with Ivy Tech within her community and set up an event there so that she could also meet folks that are college age. And she's actually going to attend Ivy Tech soon. So a lot of what Volunteers of America is doing is they're partnering with Starfire out of Cincinnati and really looking at how they can build some of these community connections more naturally. And especially working with families on, raising awareness for how to make these connections easier, right? And more organically than sometimes it's done currently. So it's pretty cool. Like I said, when I was reading this, I was like, I need to look more into coffee art because I'm not really familiar with that, but it was pretty cool. Next is Indiana Family to Family. And I know Carrie is on this. So I want to put a plug in for their conference, their Heart to Heart conference. And I want to make sure I did not put the date on this slide, but it's September 26th. 2024 coming up in about a month. And so that is a free conference. So I want to put a plug in for them. I'll put the link after when we're in the parking lot stage of registration. And part of their project, or maybe someone is doing that right now. Maybe Carrie's doing that right now. Yep, there you go. And so again, this is free. So please share this with for you guys, your organizations. I might ask Carrie, I believe it's all virtual, so maybe she can correct me if I'm wrong. I know there's a virtual piece of it. I'm just forgetting right now if it's all virtual. But part of their IPP, it's not really just around this conference, as they host this conference. They've been hosting it for years, but it was really looking at how they were currently engaging with families and caregivers and individuals. And right, we're in a new age right now of how people communicate, how people get information. You know, people don't always want to watch a 30-minute, video, right? It's those snippets, it's where you're engaging them, it's how you're collecting information. And so their project was really looking at their outreach. And what, again, not that it was bad, but what are some of the things that they can change to continue to reach more folks? What are trainings that they could either put on or share that people want? What are resources that are maybe already out there or that they can create to, again, continue to get information out? As you know, they're not just speaking with folks with IDD, right? They're connecting with families with maybe dual diagnosed, or maybe a family who just has, some mental health things that they're trying to navigate. So that is really what their project is about. So I wanted to give them a plug though for their heart-to-heart conferences. It's really cool. It's free. So a lot of good information there. And I think if you could only attend some of it, that's great too. Thanks, Carrie, for doing that. Trying to do double duty here. And one more, and this really goes along very similar in the sense of community engagement and community outreach as Volunteers of America, but Easter Seals Crossroads, their IPP grant was called Inclusion Through Community Access. And what they did was really cool. They're partnering with mainly folks that are in their adult day program. Not everyone is, but many folks that are in their adult day program, and really looking at how those individuals can connect to their communities based on their interests. So this individual, Gunnar, loved working out. He loved, he would go to a local gym and had a trainer. The trainer did not have a disability, right? This was just a community connection that he had made himself because he liked to work out. And he's met some folks there. So again, really taking that relationship that he'd already built with his trainer and hosting an event at that space. Again, just making that connection of the gym, and maybe there are other people that have, an interest in working out that might want to come and learn about it, and really just kind of building that. So he's not just among the community, but he's really of the community. And so it's kind of cool because they're doing these events that's based on what the individual wants. It's not necessarily saying, hey, Gunnar, do you want to go lift weights? It's really Gunnar loves this. This is something that he's passionate about. And he's already made that relationship with his trainer. So it's, again, just having these events in the community and really inviting others, neighbors, etc. So that's again, really that community connection. And so these are where these projects aren't necessarily always going to lead to a brand new service. I mean, it might, or a part of a service, but it's also just them creating guides of how did they go about doing this and sharing this with families and individuals and us, right? So it doesn't always lead to a new service necessarily, but it's leading to how we can support individuals to be more independent and lead the life that they want to lead. So that is those projects. I also, just real quick, I always plug this. This is just ways you can stay informed. The website, our Facebook page, the Beats Facebook page. We share all these events when we get them on that. Obviously, if you guys are subscribed to the updates, hopefully you all are. As Kelly mentioned, Mitchell, we shared the dual diagnosis trainings that are coming out. We don't have, the dates are set, but the locations are not. So that will be coming very, very shortly. And again, those are all free, so you can attend those. And then obviously, if you have any questions, to reach out to Beats Help. So that's a good way for us to get that is checked every day in case I miss an email here and there, and she will forward that on to me. Okay, leads to more creative thinking. Yes, thanks, Karen, for sure. Let me go back real quick. I'm doing really good on time. I'm not gonna lie, I'm gonna pat myself on the back today for that. We didn't need Noah to come in as my my guy who's gonna yell at people right now. Kelly Mitchell, we had a question, this might be for Holly too, but Kelly Hartman was asking that we hear many families struggle with knowing that H&W is best for them, but they need B-Man. Is there a hope or conversation happening of that being added to the H&W as we try to get consistent across the waivers?
Yeah, that's a great question, Kelly. And I think actually it's a great point of feedback. So thank you. I think as we talked about, we're really early planning stages, and I think that's an important piece of input that we need to consider when we think about, you know, further alignment across the waivers. And then as we look at waiver reset and trying to ensure that we are, you know, really creating an array of waivers that support people across disability. Certainly, I think behavior support in some form or fashion is something that we have heard from families, particularly with some individuals, the younger groups or young adults that would be interested in some sort of behavior support on the health and wellness. So appreciate that. And did we answer your question, Kelly, about the?
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say, if we did
Okay,
or not.
sorry.
I don't know. Yeah, Kelly, did that help? I don't, you could come off mute too if that's easier.
Just saw on one of the slides that you guys are sort of, you know, assuring that everything with the current arrangements for selective contracting, which I think is a B4 that we did with case management.
Mm-hmm.
And I have members ask all the time if are we planning to do that with behavior management? Of course, I'm just asking that so that it can be out there publicly. Like, is that a consideration as we move forward with behavior management that we might look at selective contracting? I don't understand the inner workings of the waiver and the agreement with HCBS, but I just thought I'd ask the question because I get asked all the time.
Yeah, so we have been asked that before. So I think we are still in a space, Kelly, with the IPPs to see what, you know, what really comes out of those IPP demonstration grants and the work around the dually diagnosed. I would say that there has been no decision to go to a B4, but there's also been no decision not to. It's really more about, you know, what can we do to ensure that the behavior support or behavior management is addressing the needs of individuals.
And so I would give a plug now just for any stakeholders listening. When we ask for input on the IPP projects, especially in my space representing Indiana Association of Behavioral Consultants, you know, there are a couple of IPP grants around behavior supports, both level 1 and basic. And it's really, really important to have your voice heard now of how you might suggest changes as we move forward. We've given lots and lots of opportunities for feedback, but I would encourage everybody to keep your eyes open for opportunities to give feedback. And then along with the BDS trainings in each district, which go with what you talked about, Kelly, each of those mornings in those locations will be holding kind of a whiteboard collaborative conversation with local BCs to talk about the IPP project entitled Behavior Supports a Foundation for Redesign. So there will be regional opportunities in person along with those days for people to come and hear what recommendations we're considering and give feedback on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Kelly.
Yeah, thanks, Kelly. I think that, oh, sorry, Kelly Mitchell. I think just stay tuned, as Holly mentioned, to the BEADS provider webinars as well. We're going to share it's only once a month, so we're going to most likely schedule more of these because we're going to run out of time, but the grantees will be sharing their projects to the public. Again, even though they're not done, so I would encourage you guys to join those. They'll be recorded as well because they're going to continue to talk about them. I mean, I can talk about them too, but a lot of times people want to hear from the people who are doing it. And that's where I think if you have questions or you want, you know, like Kelly said, to share your thoughts at this time, those are good ways to do that. I mean, you can always email us too, but if I would encourage you guys to listen to those as well. And then Carrie, I was going to have you mention the conference real quick if you want to jump off, just to share a little bit more information if it was virtual, because I might have misspoke there.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll always take an opportunity to talk about the conference. So thank you. So it is fully virtual. It is a full day conference. Anyone that registers does not have to attend the full day. They can pick and choose sessions, or if there are multiple sessions happening at the same time and they have to choose, anyone that registers will have access to recordings of all of the sessions for at least 1 month after the conference to have a chance to go back and either rewatch or watch something they didn't have a chance to watch originally. We know, I mean, it's available to families and professionals, but it really is directed at the families that we serve. So we know that life is complicated and they can't always commit a full day. So we want to make sure that that's available to them after the conference as well. A lot of topics this year kind of surrounding a lot of the things we're talking about in this meetings. We have a representative from CCLC that's participating in part of a panel, along with a VR representative talking about competitive integrated employment and that transition kind of from youth to adulthood and starting with that transition IEP. We have multiple representatives from BEADS. Holly and Heather are talking on multiple topics. We're going to have a building bridges. That is the one session that will not be recorded, is that building bridges. But Matt Rodway is also going to join them for a topic kind of talking about what the ombudsman does and the importance of incident reports and what happens and kind of all of those checks and balances within those waiver services. We also have one just talking about language access in terms of BEAD services. So lots of things. Lisa Paddock is also presenting on school discipline. So a lot of people are just in this group that are not only presenting, but a lot of relevant topics to the things that we're talking about in these advisory meetings and beyond. So yes, please share. It is free to attend. We would love to have as many people as possible.
I know they've done a lot of work around different languages, translating
yes,
their
there's
documents.
live,
and so, yeah.
Yes, live ASL and Spanish interpretation is also available, and we have all of presentations translated into Spanish to make those available as well. And we also have a couple of presentations being presented in Spanish that will have English interpretation available. So a really cool experience this year.
Yeah. Great. Thanks, Carrie. Appreciate that. Okay. I think, Noah, we might have time to share it. Let's see if I can do this real quick with the video. Just a reminder, we are in person in September in conference room A on September 18th. So looking forward to that. Okay, let's see if I can do this. It's like we have, and this is a pretty short, if you have to leave, it's okay. This is pretty short. Are you guys seeing my screen? Someone tell me. Okay. Let's see if I can do this. My always fear is that sometimes the sound doesn't work. This might not work. I don't want to hold you guys over. We might have to. The sound doesn't work. Do you guys hear that? No. Okay. All right. I'm gonna wait. Are you okay, Noah, if I wait till next time? Okay.
Yeah, that's fine.
Just
No worries.
it's gonna take me a second to mess with and I don't want to hold you guys over. But I think, let me double check. I don't think we have any more. Let's see if there's any more chats. Maybe one more just came in. Tell me if someone can read it, because I'm not seeing it now. I see that
It was just Derek saying thanks.
Oh,
everyone.
thanks, Derek. Yep.
Thank you. Yeah.
Okay, great. Well, thank you guys. This is recorded, as you guys know, and I'll send around the messages and the BEADS data. I apologize. We will be sending that out. We had one more thing that we needed to check. And so we will be sending that out. Just didn't get a chance to do it prior to this. So look forward to that as well. And then I will send around the notes. And
Jennifer, will you guys be posting this recording?
We don't typically post the recording. I send around the notes. We can check. I can double check. I don't know. I'm not actually doing the recording production but I can, if you need me to send it to you, I can do that.
No, I just need to share with our membership, and I want to do
okay.
If the recording was going to be available, I would have framed it differently. So thank you for that.
Okay. No worries. All right. Thank you guys. And we will go from there. Look forward to some couple more information just coming from me a little late. So sorry, no, about the video.
Thank you.
All right.
Bye, guys.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you, everyone.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye-bye.